look, I wanted to, and I'm happy to be here, Kyra, because this is a really critical component, I think, to some of y'all's success. And there's a lot of people in this room who may be podcasting already. Let me actually get a little lay of the land. Who is actively recording and pushing out their own podcast content right now? So there's a few people in the room that are actively doing it. Who is like, I don't want to do my own podcast, but I'll be happy to be on somebody else's? Great. But so you're doing it, you're out there. And so here's my goal today. My goal is to geek out a little bit on the technical podcasting side of things so that those who haven't done their own podcast yet could get off the ground. And then I also want to help you understand how you can be a better guest when you're on other people's podcasts. And then we will break down some tech. I brought some show and tell because I thought it would be a fun way for y'all to kind of see up close what it takes to make all this stuff happen. So most of the people in the room know me, but that's me. I was on the radio for 28 years, so I've got about 140,000 hours of broadcasting time behind me, which is a long time. And what I segued into after I left that career was helping other people get their own content off the ground and helping them produce something that would be meaningful for them. And as you're going to see, there's all kinds of reasons that we would want to start a podcast. So we're going to go after that. We'll go over those things. This is me in a nutshell. If you were to say, Matthew, what is your business about? When you're working with people and you're podcasting with them, what is your business about? I'm about three things: effective communication, avoiding tune-out, which I talked about earlier on the stage, and then executing the fundamentals flawlessly. I don't know about you all, but I can get really distracted by the shiny light, and I can get real distracted by the new thing that's out there. I've got to try this new tech, or I want to, and that ends up hurting us, I think. You got to find what works in this podcast space, and you got to keep doing it week after week after week after week, because nobody cares about your podcast until it gets to 100 episodes. You don't even have one until you get to 100 episodes, and that's when people are like, okay, you've got some credibility here. Consistency is the key to a successful podcast. So why would we want to have a podcast? For ourselves or be on others? Here's one good reason: for fun. Like, it can be just an enjoyable experience to go on somebody else's podcast or have them on your podcast and just talk about whatever you're going to talk about. The other reason you might want to do it is because you want to make a little bit of money, which is a possibility with podcasting. You might not get rich off of it right away, but there is the possibility to monetize podcast content. The other thing is you might want to become the expert. And I work with a lot of doctors in my podcast business, and this is one of the most important things to them, is that they're pretty smart people, but they really want to drill down on that niche of I am the expert. I work with this doctor in Lubbock, Texas. He's a GI doctor. And he's so unbelievable to work with because he's willing to throw himself out there. He calls himself the poop guru. And he's willing to be a little silly with what he does and put himself out there in a way where he is the definitive choice in Lubbock, Texas. Nobody goes to anybody else. He's just so colorful and charismatic. And he is the expert. He is the guy that you really want to go and see. The other reason you might want to do it is because you've built some programs or you're building a brand. Two great reasons to start a podcast. And a lot of us are coaches in this room. We do some coaching for people. You can, in theory, create your own coaching programs and then start using your podcast as a way to let people know that those things are available to you. Starting next year, we just finished it up. I should have brought it with, but we just finished a 6-week wellness course called Revive and Thrive that we're going to start advertising the hell out of on our podcast because I want to sell copies of that course through the pod, right? That's how I'm going to generate some money from it. And this is probably the biggest reason, is that you will bring new clients to the table. And I know that this is the truth because I have 2 people in this room who've been on my podcast before and now they're in my life. They're not just guests that I had on a podcast. They're in my life now, right? I chat with Dr. Anna Marie Frake. I chat with Courtney McDermott. We're road tripping tomorrow. That started on a podcast. That networking opportunity started on a podcast. So this is the 5 reasons why I think it's a really good idea to start something this week. I guess that's going to be, so there's all 6, I guess. Okay. So when we talk about podcasting, we have to kind of figure out, the kids say, sonically, what does it sound like, right? And we do. We need to figure out, what does our podcast sound like? Do we come on and is it just us? Or is it one of these situations where we're going to be one-on-one interviewing somebody else? Is it me and a buddy and we're going to co-host this thing? Are we going to use layered sound? For those of you that were in the room for Courtney's presentation, she did a great example of layered sound. She was in that podcast and then that secondary music showed up. and it generated another audio cue for you to like lean in even more. And this is, to me, the best part about the audio medium, is that when you're creative with what you put on the track, you can really manipulate people's ears to keep listening and to keep going. So 3 questions to ask yourself: who's going to be on this thing? Who are we going to talk to in an interview? And then are we going to have layered sound? So layered sound could not only just be music that you incorporate into the podcast, it could be something like a produced intro, having some big voiceover. Now, welcome to the so-and-so podcast, featuring blah, blah, blah. That's an example of layered sound. It's just another element that you're adding into the mix to keep people engaged. Because here's what I believe to be true. We are really going to get away from these recorded Zoom calls that people are calling podcasts. That's offensive. It's offensive to call a Zoom session with somebody a podcast, especially for people that are really trying hard to podcast, right? And putting a lot of effort into it. And I really think that the talking head videos, people are getting stale with those. We have analytics that show us that people very rarely make it past a 2.5-minute video on YouTube when it's just talking heads. So you think about that, and the reason that's interesting is because most of these podcasts are like 40 minutes. People don't even hear the last 38 minutes because they're so bored with it. It's just static. Nobody's moving. It's one camera. There's just no motion there to engage the audience. I really encourage you tonight, or the next couple of days, when you get on and watch any kind of an event, watch a sporting event, and watch how many times they change the frame while you're watching the content. It's about every 2 or 3 seconds. They do that on purpose. They need to keep getting your attention. And we have to think the same way when we're producing podcast content. So these are just some of the podcasts that I've had the privilege of rolling out and working on. This is actually one of my faves. It's called High School Point of View. It's a class that I teach every Friday at Desert Garden Montessori High School. And the kids produce the podcast. And it's so fun because we walk in every day, every Friday, and it's like, so what happened to you this week? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to get off your chest? What do you want to start to get into here? And they generally get pretty excited about it. And for me, I feel like a fly on the wall, because I get to listen to these high school conversations, and the stuff they talk about is absolutely ridiculous and hilarious all at the same time. There's Samir, let's talk about poop. It's so good. He just uses it. That's just somebody saying nice shit. Let's get into some of the nuts and the bolts. So when it comes to podcasting, the first thing you have to figure out is, am I going to do this thing virtually, or am I going to do this thing in person? So obviously the tech changes based on what we want to do. So if we're going to be virtual, there's a few things that I think are critically important. And I don't know where Kira is, but she's so sweet to provide this little guy to all of us. I've never used this microphone before, but I can promise you it's better than your laptop sound. And I can guarantee you it's better than your earbuds. I promise you. And I haven't even heard it yet. So USB microphones, to me, are critical to the virtual podcast recording. Now, here's what you have to understand about microphones. They are directional. So you have these lavalier microphones that we're wearing now that are a little ways away from my mouth, 6-8 inches away from my mouth. The microphones that are like USB, and let's put up, I brought show and tell because I thought it would be more fun. This is the one that you see everywhere, right? When you're popping around on Instagram and you're watching people, everybody's got this Shure SM7B microphone. And look, it's a great microphone. It is. It's about $300, $279 is what they sell it for in Best Buy. I actually don't use this microphone, and I don't love this microphone because A, it requires a bit of power to actually make it sound good. And you have to eat this microphone in order for it to pick you up and sound whole. Otherwise, you just sound like very hollow. And when I mean eat the microphone, I mean you are literally eating the microphone. Your lips are touching the foam piece as you are talking. That's how close you have to be to a microphone like this in order for it to pick up your sound. Now, obviously, and this is why I don't like this microphone for a lot of people, when you're really close to a microphone, you have to be cognizant of a few things. You have to be cognizant of your P-pops, right? When you use words like cat and these really harsh sounds. If you just speak, it pops in the microphone. You guys have heard this before, right? You've heard this before. And so it requires a bit of mic etiquette. You You have to be $140,000 of broadcast time to realize that as you're having this very casual conversation about people, that you need to move the microphone when you're going to say words like cat. You have to be really aware of where this thing is in and around your mouth in order for it to pick you up. Now, if you want to sound hollow and thin, put it down here, don't care, right? But if you want people to hear the tones in your voice and the way that you sound, a microphone like this just has to be really close. So I see it everywhere, you see it everywhere. It's not my favorite. This guy right here is one of my favorites. This is made by Elgato, and it's called the Wave 3. So I like this microphone because of its price point, number one. It's about 130 bucks. I also actually really like the aesthetic of it. When I use it at the home, though, I take it off of this particular stand and I put it on a stand that's higher, because if I'm sitting at the table and I'm here, can see where the directional is, right? And so I have a little, I use a flexible arm actually that I kind of, what do you call it, cinch to the table that I'm on, and then I bring that thing right to where I need it to go. So I love the Wave 3 because like I said, not only is the price point amazing on this, microphone sounds so warm. It's really friendly to voices. So the other great part about it is you can adjust the volume on the top, or on that little knob, and then this right here is a mute button. So I use this all the time when I'm on podcasts. When I'm not talking, I'll just mute myself. That way I can clear my throat, or I can take a sniff or something like that, right? Not that I'm doing a bunch of cocaine while I'm on these podcasts, but I'm able to work that really effortlessly, and it's not intrusive, right? It doesn't look silly on the camera. It's fine. It's fine. So it's a really, really awesome microphone at about 130 bucks. Now you've got this little guy, which again, I don't know about, so I can't totally endorse it. The microphone that I will tell you that I love, and I showed it to you earlier, is these little Boyas. And again, I like these things for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're super cheap, 40, 50 bucks. And you can get the one that comes with both the Lightning and the USB-C. And these will plug right into your laptop. These will also plug right into your phone. And now when you're recording content with your phone, you've got high quality lavalier sound. So I really like the Boyas for anybody in this room that's also doing lots of content creation, because this is just such a small little thing to carry with you everywhere you go. And the record time on it's something like 4 to 6 hours, which I never use. But it's just so much better to have a little bit of a microphone on your social media videos, because as good as the iPhone is, it's not as good as a microphone that's made to pick up sound. And what we see in some of our analytics is one of the biggest reasons that people tune out is because of the way things sound. So it's just one of those things where, man, your content better be fire if you're going to sound terrible, right? It better be fire. Because if it doesn't, this is a nice way to upgrade. So I love the Boya. Here's the other one. Yeah.
The Yetis?
I don't use the Yetis. I found them to be just okay, but there's nothing wrong with them. Right, no, nothing. I mean, like, there's the Yeti microphones out there, the Elgato microphones are out there, the Shure mics are out there. They're all really comparable to each other. This is we'll jump ahead a little bit, but as you can see, I hate earbuds for podcasting. They're terrible. They sound awful, they sound hollow, they come in and out all the time. Sounds like they're fighting Wi-Fi constantly. They're just a terrible option. Use them to listen, not to talk. The last mic that I'll tell you about that I just think is worth your time, and especially if you record a lot of content and you're gonna be more than maybe 10 feet away from your camera person, is something that's called the Rode Go2 wireless system. And these things are just unbelievably fantastic. They're like the lavs that I'm wearing right now. You have your receiver, and then you've got the microphone. What's so cool about this microphone is that you can plug a lavalier into it. So one of these things can plug in, and then this can just be the drop down that's in there. The other thing that I love about this microphone is you can buy these little Rode handles, and this actually slides right in the top. You can cover it with a piece of foam. Wow. And now you look like you've got a microphone that you could bring anywhere and do anything with. So these are amazing choices for mic quality, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this because it's that important to me. The USB quality sound is where you want to be. Let's talk about headphones, Courtney, since you brought it up. If I had to make a choice and I said, He's either going to wear headphones or he's going to have a good microphone. What do you want? I'm going to say I want him to wear headphones. Yes. I'm going to say I want the headphones because the headphones eliminate all the echo that comes in the voice, and they just make the sound a lot easier to digest. Headphones are critically important to podcasting. Now, there's some settings that you can do where you can turn off that echo cancellation, and it does a decent job, but it doesn't do a pro job. So, depending on where you're at. These are, in my opinion, the greatest headphones that have ever lived in the history of the world. I have probably owned 52 pair of these headphones over my 28-year career. They're the only headphones I've ever bought for a number of reasons. Number one, they sound incredible. They're so wonderful. Number two, these soft little pillows, they feel very good on your ears. So you can wear these for 2 or 3 hours at a time and they don't hurt your ears. They sound great. Some people don't want to wear headphones because it messes up their hair, right? And I get that. I don't like I call it headphone hair, like you do. You get that pressed down here and it looks silly, especially if you're going to be on camera, right? So I went out and I invested in these little JLab minis. Look at these little things. They are $30 at Best Buy. And here's the thing, this is a pro tip. Don't connect these headphones to any other computer than the one you're going to use for your podcast. Because you don't want to be right in the middle of your podcast and your earbuds try to connect to your phone or something like that. And then you're like, I lost you, right? And you didn't lose them, you're fine. But the reason that I like these little guys is because I can set them in my ear and you really can't tell that I have headphones in. But I've done all the things I need to do, which is eliminate the echo that people are hearing. Okay, so that's mics and headphones.
What was the first headphone?
These are the Sony MDR 7506.
And what was the first mic? The little one?
The little Boya?
Yeah,
Yeah, the little Boya mics. They're not a great brand. This is not a high quality situation here, but I have found anything inside of 10 feet, they work incredible. Like I have no issues with these things. I was worried that it was going to be a cheap microphone, but I actually think that they pick up really well. So I'm happy with them. Let's talk a little bit about lighting, quiet spots, and how you're going to record this thing. Just really briefly, stay with me in the weeds here. Lighting's critical because almost every one of us are going to use our podcast to create digital content for ourselves. And what I'm doing with my doctors is we're not only recording the content for them, but we're using the podcast content for their actual digital ads that they're using to generate business for themselves. And this is a great thing for so many reasons. But probably the biggest one is you get to do more with less. You know, when I approach somebody, that I typically will ask them, like, how much content are you putting out in a week? And they'll say something to the effect of 5 to 15 pieces a week. And I say, well, we probably need to be up at around 20 to 30 pieces of content a week if we're going to really make this thing successful. And with the podcast, a 40-minute conversation can be turned into 28 pieces of content with the click of a button using AI, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So this is why I think like lighting is a pretty important thing. Because obviously, as Kyra told us earlier, you saw the 2 images of the poorly lit testimonials and then the ones that were well lit. It's a no-brainer which one is more attractive to look at. So lighting is a pretty critical thing. What I do, and this is for my glasses people in the house, is I keep my lights at 45 degrees above my head, about 2 or 3 feet, and they're angled down at me. That's how I avoid having that halo in my glasses. So up and angled is where you want to be. I have 2 gigantic ring lights in my studio that I suspend from the ceiling. I don't put them on a stand because the stands are so clunky. So I've actually suspended them from the ceiling, which is probably a nerd out. I get that. Hey, Steve.
Hey, how are you?
But it's one of those things where it just allows me to be really flexible in my lighting. So I really love having good lighting. Quiet spots, they're not as important as they used to be, but I still think they're important. Because if we're in the middle of a conversation and there's some noise that happens, you didn't even hear what I said. Because everybody was just paying attention to that noise. And what does this sound like? Sounds like dogs barking when we're at home doing these calls. Sounds like our kids calling us from the other room, because our wives or our husbands calling on us while we need things. Like, this is distracting for the audience. And if we're trying to avoid tune out, which I believe we should be doing strongly, we want to have the cleanest sound that we possibly can. So this is why I think a quiet spot's a really good idea. One word of caution, which is please don't podcast from your kitchen. It's the worst room in your house to podcast from. And it's the room that most people I find who don't have a dedicated space go to. You have tile floors, you have glass, you have granite countertops, and all of that is really lively. And so it makes the sound bounce all over the place. So good quiet spot. I will tell you a little secret. When COVID hit, every single radio personality in America, myself included, started doing their shows from our closets because it's the most dense area in our room. So we would literally put up blankets in front of us and speak into the blankets because it just helps deaden that sound, makes it easier for you guys to listen to. When it comes to how are we going to record this thing, there's a lot of really good technology out there. I have not found anything that works better than StreamYard for me personally. It's just an unbelievably robust Zoom. It allows you this really cool function, which is to go live on your YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter channels while you're taping your podcast, and you can get comments in real time. So for folks that don't mind recording live, StreamYard is my go-to because I can put comments on the screen. I can put scrolling tickers at the bottom. If I have Courtney on the show, I'll make a graphic for her that has her book on it, and so I can put that on the screen. So again, I'm going back to this whole idea of I really want to keep generating interest for people. And so I'm constantly putting things up and down on that screen so that the people that are watching are engaged. Now let's switch gears. If we're going to go in person, which we're going to see today, it requires a whole different setup because now you need something that you're going to record this audio into. And I'm going to really go quickly over these next couple of ones just because I don't know how many people are going to start a live podcast tomorrow or next week. But in case you are, you're going to need to get a recording device. Most common ones that I see out there are the Rodecaster Pros. You probably have seen those in other podcasts. It's that one that has the 8-color little keypad, and it's got a little mixer that's got about 8 or 9 inputs on it. It's really good, but it's a little clunky and it's a little big, and it takes up too much time on the table. Just recently, I have switched to this little guy right here. This is how I record all my live podcasts. It's battery operated, so I just plug in a little bit of one of those battery packs to it, so I don't even use the actual batteries that come in it. And I can plug in 4 different microphones to it and control all the sound with this dude right here. This has changed my life because I don't need power to record a podcast anymore from an audio perspective. This is called the Zoom H6. So, is that good? And I love this guy, right? He sounds amazing. He's easy to work with. He's easy to download. And if you're on the fly, it comes with this little contraption that you can put on the top of it. And you have these 2 microphones. But of course, I would never tell you to use that. You want to have better sound than that. XLR mics, that's where things get a little bit tricky. I think everybody's seeing, here's the bottom of this microphone. That's an XLR cable. It's like the prongs, male and female. When you're in live sound, you're probably in USB, or you're out of USB and you're into the XLRs. You just have to be, because this is what the technology uses and requires. Of all the microphones that you see here and of all the microphones that we could use, I get a little pushback for this, but I use the most traditional microphone that's on planet Earth. You guys have seen this microphone on every comedy stage, on every concert stage. It doesn't matter where you go, this is the microphone people are using for a very good reason. I can hold this microphone down here, or I can hold this microphone here. I can hold it over here, or I can hold it over here. And when you're on a podcast, you're interviewing people that don't have great mic etiquette. They don't know how to use this thing. And so like Steve and I, we've been on podcasts where they've got the microphone down here. And as much as I'm trying to get them to inch it up, they don't do it. And in post, I'm able to raise the levels and make it sound fantastic. And then of course, I always use a windscreen because people don't know how to talk without popping into the microphone or cutting into the microphone. It's a terrible sound. Okay, lastly, while we're on this slide, earbuds suck, eliminate them completely. They are terrible for sound. You can use them to listen, but please don't use them to talk. Avoid the big and noisy rooms, and let's lose the recorded Zoom calls. If you're audio only, you can eliminate some of the things that I've talked about today. Cool. All right.
Is audio only the way to get people listening?
Look, I think audio is completely fine. I do not believe that you need a YouTube podcast. It adds an incredibly expensive dimension to what you're trying to do, and it's not necessary for everybody. The only reason I want you to have video is because I want you to be able to cut up social media clips. So, but the statistics say that 74% of people discover brands through audio. So when you think about that number and how high it is, it's worth your time doing something that's audio driven. And look, audio podcasts are so much easier, right? They're so much easier. So let's talk about this, how to be a guest that doesn't suck. And look, I felt like we should cover this because even for those of you who don't want to be on other podcasts, you should understand the amount of work that's going into having you on their podcast. All of the people that are having you on their podcast are going through all of these steps that you and I are talking about today. So they're putting a lot of effort. It's not just as simple as like, I zoomed in, I recorded for 40 minutes and I'm out. That was your version, right? My version is now all of the post work is in front of me. Now I've got to download the audio tracks, want to mix them down, want to edit out any ums or ahs or things that are kind of a disaster or something like that. And it can take a couple of hours to kind of mix down and produce a nice piece of content for people to listen to. So you should be aware of that. So what are some things that you can do as a guest to make yourself the most incredible guest ever? Here's the first thing. Call them by their name. You don't understand how important it is to use people's names while you're interviewing, especially in an audio medium. I can't see you. And so if somebody just starts talking, I don't know who that is. And so what I will often coach people to say is I will say something like, Courtney, earlier you mentioned this. What do you think about blah, right? And I'll get into the question that way. And so I will use the guest's name all the time. I keep a pad of paper, like the one that I gave you, right next to me on my desk. I am forever writing notes. I'm writing down their name, the name of their podcast. I'm writing down things that I've learned about them, which is tip number 2, which is prep for them too. They're prepping for you so fiercely. They're going through and they're looking at your websites, they're looking at your social medias, they're watching your videos. I want you to do the same thing for them. I want you to be able to direct a question toward the host. Here's a fact. I have never met anybody in my life that doesn't like to talk about themselves. For real. And so as a guest on somebody else's podcast, if I can say to them, hey, I noticed you made this post, Anna, last week on your Instagram page. Tell me a little bit about that. Man, does that host, his euphoria goes through the roof, or her goes through the roof. He's like, wow, this person actually really paid attention to who I am and what I'm about. So use their names, prep for them too. This is good tips. I think another great tip is to send a thank you email as soon as you guys are done. As soon as the podcast is over, just fire off a note. It can be super simple. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Really enjoyed it. And then the fourth tip I'm going to give you to be a guest that doesn't suck is when they give you collateral to share their content. If you think their content looks shitty, you probably shouldn't have been on their podcast in the first place. Okay? But I'm really dead serious about that. When they spend a lot of time getting these clips designed and ready. And if they're going to go through the painstaking process of posting and tagging you and asking you to collaborate, it's one post on your grid. I think you'll be all right. I really do. And it goes a long way for the host. Hosts love it when you share their content. Any questions about how to be a guest that doesn't suck? Amazing. All right. Let's jam here. The distribution of podcasts is something to spend a little bit of time on. For those that think maybe this is what you want to do, we'll cover this really, really quickly. Everybody's familiar with all of the platforms out there, Apple, Spotify, Alexa, iHeartRadio. I mean, there's 30 of them probably, if we're honest. There's only really 2 that matter, and they are Apple and Spotify. Almost 85% of the traffic that you will experience on a podcast comes through those 2 platforms. So yes, it's still a great idea to be on Google, Alexa, iHeartRadio, all of these other platforms, but they won't get you the listenership that Spotify and Apple will. So on that note,
Spotify, what was the other?
Apple. So those are the 2 ones. On that note, Spotify and Apple make it really easy for you to upload your own podcast to their content. And then you just have to worry about one channel and you're good and you don't have to think about it again, right? I don't think it's a great way to go because you lose the wide reach. And I think the purpose of a podcast is to be into a sea of many, not a sea of one. So we want to increase the distribution. So I use a platform called Podbean. I'm trying to think of how much in the weeds I want to get on this, right? There's a few different distribution platforms and they all do something really similar. The first thing you have to do is hook up your Apple, Spotify, iHeart, Audible, Alexa, Pandora, Samsung, Player FM, and all these other things. You have to hook those up. So you have to get those up and running with an email address and some source of audio. Once you connect the channels, now you use a distribution platform to push it out to all those channels. Cool. So step 3 is the YouTube piece of it. And look, there are so many cool pieces of AI out there right now that if you're going to get into the podcasting world, I'm going to encourage you to use right away. One of them is a product called Opus. Everybody talks about it, and I will tell you it is not a perfect AI situation. You will almost always have to do some editing with the clips that it releases, but it generates 28 clips in about 10 minutes. And you won't be able to get that many clips by yourself going through it and isolating each one, resaving it. And the cool part about it is you can completely customize the template on Opus One, and it puts transcriptions right on the top that you can edit. So it's just a very, very awesome little piece of technology. The other one that I really like is Captivate. I've mentioned it a couple of times. Captivate, you upload your audio to Captivate, and what it does is it produces so much content for you that you basically have your calendar for an entire week. It does social polls. It pulls incredible quotes. It gives you copy for yourself to post on LinkedIn, Twitter, Reels, TikTok. The other thing that I love about it is it gives your guests content that they can use to post. And so what I will do is I will copy the guest copy and I'll send it to Dr. Anna Marie and I'll say, hey, your podcast is coming out this week. Here's a few options for if you just want to do copy and paste. And what did you say to me last week? I just copied and pasted and I put it up. Yeah. It's so easy for my guests. Like, that's the thing. We want our people to share this stuff. We got to make it so easy for them. So that's why I love, they used to call it FlowSend, now they call it Captivate. It just produces so much beautiful content for you. Okay, more nice things about me. Let's go to some outlines and some benchmarks. And if this is too heady, I'm going to apologize up front. But this is stuff that's really important because it's sticky. This is the stuff that people remember in your podcast content. You know, any SmartList listeners here? Yeah? Okay, like I love the SmartList podcast. And one of my favorite benchmarks every single week is figuring out how they're going to say bye at the end of it. It's just a cute little thing that they do, but I count on it. I look forward to it. I know it's going to happen. A benchmark is anything you repeat week after week after week after week on your show. And that could be a bunch of different stuff, right? It could be a Q&A, it could be an audience participation segment, which can look anything like a question that you pull off social media. One of the things that I constantly am having my doctors do is pull their YouTube comments and turn that into more content. So, and turn that into content that we do within their show too. Every one of my docs has one question that they repeat week after week after week. They ask every guest the same question. And the cool thing about that is at the end of the year, the end of the month, they have this great little montage of all these things that have been answered all in the same form. It's really, really awesome. So think about what your benchmarks are going to be. What is something that you could do that's not just introducing your doc, talking to your doc, and saying goodbye to your doc? What else could we do that would make this more interesting? 3 things you need to know. Where was your favorite vacation spot? Like anything that you can do to humanize people. That's the encouragement here with the benchmark. Next on this big list of to-dos is what is your plan? And I'm really adamant about this piece. I think that you have to select a day and a time to record your podcast and stick to it. You will not want to do this because it will be easy for you to like just do it when it makes sense. The part about that is you will fall off that bike after a while. It's really tough to manage that schedule. And here's the other reason, and the biggest reason, is it's a nightmare for guests. When you record every Thursday at 1 o'clock, you never have to think about what other time you're going to be doing your podcast. That's when I do. So we record our podcast every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, or 3:30 rather, every Thursday at 3:30. This is just the time where we do the podcast. And if the guest can't fit into those times, it's up to you if you want to make the concession. But I don't. I say this is when we record, and what I have found is everybody on my list has made time for me because they understand what I'm trying to bring to the table. So find a day, stick to a day, it makes a lot of sense. I'm a huge fan of outlines. And not everybody likes to use these. Some people like to say, like, I just like to show up and I just like to shoot from the hip. And I think that's fine if you're a guest. But if you're the actual host of a podcast, you've got to have some structure on this thing. And the reason that you have to have structure is because of what I mentioned earlier. We need to keep the audience engaged. And so if I know I've got, my special benchmark feature coming up about 15 minutes from now, I'll set up a question that says something like, Heather, it's been great having you on the show so far. I'm going to ask you about your favorite vacation spot in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's go back to that thing we were just talking about and answer this question. It's the teaser. I've sent that audio cue to my listeners saying, hey, keep sticking around. We've got more content coming up. And I can't do that when I don't have an outline. That outline, and the other thing about it is that outline allows me to plug and play. Now I don't have to recreate all my shows from scratch. I just say, what's the intro I need to do? What's the questions I want to ask? What's the benchmark feature I'm going to execute? How am I going to say goodbye to these people? What is it that I'm going to wrap up with? And so I love having an outline for my podcast because it just makes everything so much smoother and, more importantly, easier to listen to. And that is your job, to make this thing as easy as you possibly can for people to hear, because there is so much competition out there for their ears, right? Somebody told me the other day that we're exposed to 3,500 messages in a day. In a single day, 3,500 people trying to get your attention. So you got to cut through that noise. Good luck. All right, now let's talk about creating the demo and getting ready to launch. And obviously, I know I'm moving through a lot of content very, very quickly, but we can always catch up after. The reason that you have to create the demo is because as you're getting all these channels ready, Apple, Spotify, Podbean, any of them, you're going to need a piece of audio content to upload initially. So you can't get started until you have a piece of content. And so the way that I usually will coach people to do this thing is I will say, I want you to record 3 podcasts. Book your first 3 guests, schedule your time to record them, and then let's get those things executed. We do this for several reasons. Probably the most important is that we get to test out our gear. And we're able to work out the bugs a little bit before we get off and running in this podcast world. So recording 3 podcasts does a nice little thing for us. So what it does is it allows us to grab our favorite 90-second moments and create launch reels. So this is a little bit of strategy that I'll share with you. I have all of my folks that I work with record their first 3 podcasts, and I say, what are the best 90 seconds from each one? Give me 3 90-second reels from every single one of those podcasts. And now what I've got is 9 launch audio sequences that I'm going to roll out the week of the podcast, if that makes sense. And then we're going to take all of these and we're going to rate them. We're going to look at the 9 and we're going to literally listen back to them. We're going to say, what is the best reel that we have? What's the one that showcases our podcast the best? And that's the one that I'm going to load up for my demo. That's the piece that I'm going to have because that's the thing people are going to hear first. And so in that demo, what we should be looking to do is explain to people what they're going to get when they come to see you. Is it humor? Is it a really good interview? Whatever your special sauce is, that should be in this demo so that when people hit it, they're like, ooh, that sounds like a good show. Because what do we want them to do? We want them to hit that follow button, right? Because now we're going to show up on their feed every time we put out a new podcast, and it's going to be right at the top for them, and they're going to make it easy for people to consume your content. So after we've recorded our first 3, we get our launch sequence all rolled out. We're getting really dangerously close to moving on to the next step. So now we go back to what I mentioned a few minutes ago, which is choosing your platform, uploading your demo, linking all of your pages, which some of you who have podcasts know what a chore that is, and then setting that release date. Starting the hype reel. When is this going to be released? And I will say for the people in this room, it is, I don't have a calendar, but it's October, right? So I think that if we got started on a podcast today, if you all started getting going today, you could realistically launch January 1st. That's very real. That's very real for you. And that's actually a great amount of lead time. I can get people off the ground and going in 2 weeks. That's a real effort, but 90 days, that's a great launching pad. Because, it's not as easy to book all the guests that you want for the first 3. Sometimes you need to be flexible. But once you get your dates scheduled for the release, and you have all your show notes and your demos posted correctly, like, you're off and running. And now you can do all the things that we talked about in the beginning, which is build your brand, sell your programs, sell your coaching, become the experts, build sponsorships on these things so you can monetize them. And then most importantly, have fun. Like, this should be a really cool adventure for everybody here. I always want to end with this little bit, which is to be kind to your mind. Because as you build this podcast, you will come up against obstacles, and this is my gentle reminder to be gentle with yourself. You'll get there. There's a learning curve with this stuff. I have 140,000 hours behind me. There is stuff that I do in my sleep that is not natural to everybody. Just where I move the mic when I talk, these types of things. It takes years to sort of learn that. But as you build your podcast, you will find that you just get to interview so many neat people. You get to meet great folks who will enter your life in a meaningful way. You'll build relationships with folks that could lead to stages. I just think about all the opportunities. In fact, I'm doing this right now. I'll just give you the story. I am pitching a company right now to come in and do their leadership conference at the first of the year. And what I am pitching to these guys is that I want to come in, talk, but then I also want to come in every 3 months and do a follow-up visit with them. And what I have done brilliantly is invite the CEO on my podcast. Now we're going to have a really good exchange. We're going to have really meaningful content for 20 to 30 minutes. We're going to get to know each other in a real way, and it's going to make that sell seem a little less salesy. Because, hey, I'm just a friend, man. We just chopped it up on the podcast together. Once you bring me in, let's kind of keep doing this whole thing. So thank you for listening. I hope that I answered a few questions. I know that we bowled through so much content, and I understand that. So, again, if anybody has questions, I'm super happy to, chop it up and talk about it on the side. Cool? Woo! Woo! Woo!